Let's talk about India's plastic problem. It is massive. We're talking about a mountain of plastic waste generated every single year. But the really interesting story here isn't just about the problem, it's about the solution. For nearly a decade, India has been fighting a different kind of battle. Not just with cleanups, but with rules. It's a war of regulations, constantly changing and evolving to get ahead of the plastic crisis. So let's break down this fascinating story of how India is rewriting the rules of responsibility.
So think about it for a second. That plastic bottle you just tossed out, who's really on the hook for it? Is it you, the person who used it? Is it the company that made and sold it? Or is it the government's job to deal with it? For a long, long time, this was just a messy game of pointing fingers. But as we're about to see, India has been slowly but surely changing the rules of that game.
So, how did we get here? Well, the story really unfolds in 4 key moments. It all starts back in 2016 with the foundational blueprint. Then we see the first big refinements in 2018. Then comes a real game-changing twist in 2021, and finally, the big digital revolution in 2023. Each of these steps shows us a smarter, more targeted way of thinking about plastic waste.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to dig into that 2016 foundation that really set the stage for everything. Then, we'll see how those rules were tweaked and improved in 2018. After that, we'll look at a really surprising decision in 2021 about food packaging, and then the 2023 digital overhaul. And finally, we'll pull it all together to see the big picture.
Okay, let's go back to 2016. Before this, the approach to plastic waste was, well, it was kind of all over the place. It mostly relied on local governments and, us, the citizens, to handle it. But the 2016 rules came in and fundamentally changed the entire game by introducing one single revolutionary concept that shifted the whole burden of responsibility.
And that concept is called Extended Producer Responsibility, or EPR. And it was an absolute game changer. The idea is pretty simple, right? It says that the companies who make and profit from selling plastic products should also be responsible for what happens to them at the end of their life. For the first time in India, the producers were legally on the hook for their plastic even after you threw it away.
But it wasn't just about the big companies. The 2016 rules created this sort of triangle of responsibility. Yes, the producers had to set up systems to collect their waste. But local governments also had to build out the infrastructure, like sorting facilities. And all of us, the waste generators, we had a part to play too, separating our waste at home. Everyone had a job to do.
So, a couple of years go by, and it becomes pretty clear that the original 2016 blueprint needed a few, let's call them renovations. Some of the rules were a bit vague, and producers needed more practical options. So, the 2018 amendments were all about adding clarity and creating smarter pathways for managing plastic.
And here is a perfect example of what I mean. The original rule from 2016 was kind of a blunt instrument. It just said, phase out non-recyclable plastic. But the 2018 update was much more surgical. It gave producers more choices, creating 2 brand new pathways for dealing with those really tricky plastics.
So the first new option was this idea of energy recovery. This basically meant that instead of just trying to recycle plastic, companies could now transform that waste into a valuable resource, like usable heat, electricity, or even fuel. It was a whole new way of looking at the problem.
And the second new path? Alternate use. This was all about getting creative and finding new purposes for plastic waste. The most famous example, of course, is using certain kinds of plastic to actually help build roads. You're literally turning a pollution problem into durable infrastructure.
The 2018 rules also cut through a ton of red tape. I mean, could you imagine being a big national company and having to register separately in every single state you operate in? What a headache. The new rules simplified all of that, creating one central registration system, a seemingly small change that made a huge difference.
All right, fast forward to 2021, and just when you thought the rules were only going to get stricter and stricter, the government threw a massive curveball. They did a complete 180 on a long-standing rule, and by doing that, they unlocked a huge new opportunity for a truly circular plastic economy. See, from day one, there had been one really hard and fast rule. No recycled plastic for food packaging. Period. It was a total ban driven by very valid safety concerns. And for years, that was just the way it was.
And then, in 2021, as technology and policy started to catch up with each other, that long-standing rule was completely flipped on its head.
The 2021 amendment basically said, okay, Recycled plastic can now be used for food packaging, but, and this is a really big but, it has to meet the incredibly strict safety standards set by India's Food Authority. This was a massive step. It opened the door to creating a closed-loop system for things like plastic food containers.
Okay, so by 2023, the rules were pretty well established, but there was still one big challenge: enforcement. How do you make sure everyone is actually following the rules? The answer? A total digital overhaul. You can think of it like installing a high-tech monitoring system for the entire plastic industry.
The heart of this whole thing was a new, mandatory online portal. No more pushing paper, no more trying to navigate different rules in different states. Now, every single producer, importer, and brand owner had to register on one single national platform. This made the whole system transparent and, most importantly, data-driven.
And this new digital system wasn't just about making things convenient. It was all about accountability. Companies now had to link their registrations to their official tax IDs, their PAN, their GST. This made it much harder to fly under the radar. The process itself was also streamlined into a clear two-step system, creating more predictability for everyone involved.
They even changed the wording of a law itself. The 2023 rules officially got rid of the idea of renewing a registration. Now, that might sound like a tiny bureaucratic detail, but it actually signals a really big shift in thinking. The goal isn't periodic applications anymore. It's about being in a state of continuous, ongoing compliance.
So let's just step back for a moment. We've journeyed all the way from those foundational rules in 2016 to this sophisticated digital system in 2023. So what does it all add up to? Well, when you look at the whole picture, a really clear and powerful strategy comes into focus.
4 things really stand out. First, the burden of responsibility has been decisively shifted onto the shoulders of producers. Second, vague rules have consistently been replaced with clear, actionable options. Third, data is now king. Thanks to that digital portal, everything can be tracked and accounted for. And finally, and maybe most importantly, these rules aren't set in stone. They're designed to be adaptable, to evolve as technology and challenges change.
When you put it all together, India has built this really impressive, sophisticated system for managing plastic waste, one that holds producers accountable in a way that was pretty much unthinkable just a decade ago. But the ultimate question remains, in a country of over 1 billion people, will these smart, evolving rules finally be enough to win the war on plastic?